Will the city attorney please report to the conference table so we can begin the meeting?
Or not.
Or not? All right, we will call the Belmont City Council workshop for September 15th, 2025 to order. And we will begin with some recognitions and acknowledgments, that being a proclamation recognizing Constitution Day. And as a former professor of constitutional law, this of course is a day near and dear to my heart. I shall now read this proclamation here, recognizing Constitution Day in the city of Belmont. Whereas on September 17th, 1787, the Constitution of the United States of America was signed by the delegates to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, establishing the foundation of our nation's government and the framework for the rule of law, liberty, and justice. And whereas the United States Constitution stands as the oldest written national constitution still in use and has served as an enduring symbol of democracy and the guiding document for our republic for over 2 centuries. And whereas Constitution Day commemorates the formation and signing of this historic document and recognizes the patriots who dedicated themselves to securing the blessings of liberty for all Americans. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this anniversary and to encourage citizens to reflect on the importance of active civic engagement, the responsibilities of citizenship, and the freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. And whereas the City of Belmont proudly joins communities across the nation in honoring the legacy and significance of the United States Constitution and in promoting the values and principles it dignifies. Now, therefore, I, James Heffron, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Belmont, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim September 17th, 2025 as Constitution Day in the City of Belmont, and I encourage all citizens to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies, educational activities, and reflection on the rights and duties of American citizenship. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Belmont to be affixed on this 15th day of September 2025. So, happy Constitution Day to everyone later this week. And again, as a former professor of constitutional law, I encourage everyone to read the Constitution and understand what's in it as well as what's not in it. Very useful exercise. All right. That being said, I will entertain a motion to set the agenda.
Motion to set the agenda.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Catherine. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is set. I should also add that we will have some additional recognitions and acknowledgments, but that will occur in the course of the presentations tonight, so stay tuned for that. Somewhat unusually, we have a consent agenda here for our workshop, and for that, I will turn it over to the City Manager, Miles Braswell.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. The first item on consent is the consideration and approval of an ordinance to close multiple streets on December 2nd, 2025 for the Belmont Christmas Parade. You can see that the Christmas Parade is going to take place from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. The actual ordinance lists the streets to be closed, and included is a map for Exhibit A. That's item B1 on consent. And item B2 is the request to apply for the asset inventory and assessment grants and approval of a resolution. This is for a $150,000 grant for the water system and a $150,000 grant for the sewer system. All the financial contributions will be in kind, given that staff is dedicated to the project, therefore no cash match is required. There's also a resolution that authorizes the city manager and public works director to complete the grant and act as official representatives. Those are the 2 items for consent. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Miles. Any questions about either item on the consent agenda? There being none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. That brings us to Part C, the regular agenda. When I was in law school, my civil procedure professor said you can never have enough procedure, and we will put that to the test today because we have a number of presentations and public hearings and resolutions to approve and steer in and out of. But we will start with item C1, 2025 Comprehensive Land Use Plan Update Introduction. And for that, I'll recognize our Planning Director, Tiffany Farrow.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and the rest of Council. I am excited to share with you tonight the culmination of approximately 18 months worth of work, not only by our staff, but by the entire community of Belmont. And so I am just grateful for the opportunity to be able to share this evening. And with that, just wanted to start this evening off with a kind of an introduction about how the schedule for the night is going to go and the plan itself. So again, my introduction is related to the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and traditionally that is thought to be one plan. But how our effort here is a culmination of several plans that collectively we are referring to as our full and actually comprehensive land use plan update. And so as a part of our stack of presentations this evening, I will be providing an introduction to this effort as well as a wrap-up after you've heard from all of our consultants. We will start off the consultant presentations by hearing from Eddie Staley with Withers Ravenel, who will share with you all and the public about the utility modeling that has contributed to both the data analysis within the comp plan itself and a tool for the city's ongoing use. Next, we will hear from Matt Hayward with Kinley Horn, who is the representative of the consultant team that helped to prepare the multimodal transportation plan. As a reminder, the multimodal transportation plan is also effectively serving as the mobility chapter of the larger comprehensive land use plan update. And so then finally we will hear from Michael Dunning with Men Design Co. and Dylan Gehring with Placervia Design as they present both the larger comprehensive land use plan update effort as well as a Wilkinson Boulevard small area plan that was included as part of their project scope. But before we get going with the update of what the plan is projected to become, I wanted to first start off by sharing a little bit about the history of long-range planning in Belmont. And we are proud that in 1966, Belmont actually created its first land development and community facilities plan, which is most similar to what we now refer to as a comprehensive land use plan. This effort that we undertook proactively back in 1966 also led to the first zoning ordinance. The intention and vision for the city even then was to focus on land uses and future development, but the concentration was specifically land use that radiated approximately 2 miles out from the central city core. We've then since expanded our boundary and our vision area, and so you'll see that as our plans have evolved over time. In 2007, Belmont adopted its first comprehensive land use plan in the form that we're used to seeing it today, as city leaders proactively realized that the city itself was at an important crossroads with growth and development. In the 2007 comprehensive land use plan, it's where the idea of village centers was first introduced, and we still are seeing that both in the 2018 comp plan and what will be proposed to you this evening. The comp plan that's in place today was adopted in 2018. The planning efforts started back in 2016, and ultimately this version of the plan established the city's first vision statement, outlined place types and associated land uses, established several small area plans in addition to the village centers, and established measures for actually implementing the city's goals. As a reminder, the state of North Carolina now requires comprehensive plans to be updated regularly in order for us to continue to utilize zoning regulations to guide growth and development within our area. There is no guidance specifically outlining the number of years between those plans, although a suggested time frame that is generally accepted and recommended by the School of Government is 5 to 10 years, and that range is dependent on several influencing factors, whether that is a community's growth changes in the vision for what the community should be, or any others, whether that's utilities or some event that happened that needed to shape our vision and change direction. And so, when we started thinking about this and the need to update our plans from the 2018 plan, we had already embarked on a community engagement effort with the 2023 pedestrian plan update. And we knew that while pedestrian planning was important, it certainly wasn't where we needed to ultimately land in terms of understanding the true need of transportation in our community. And so even before we began thinking about a larger comprehensive land use plan effort, we applied for and were successfully awarded a grant from NCDOT to develop our first multimodal transportation plan for the city. At the same time, there were visions for infrastructure going on in other departments besides planning, as Public Works had already begun and started pursuing a citywide sewer capacity study based on the direction as provided by council. So with an understanding that these efforts were already going on and they were prioritized, we understood the importance of having that data inform the work that we were doing when we were envisioning the future for land use here in the city. So with that being said, we were looking to run some concurrent planning efforts so that things were no longer being looked at or studied in a silo, but instead looked at in conjunction with one another. So we understood if we envisioned growth in certain areas or the need for it, that we had a better grasp of the infrastructure that would be required to support that. So, in order to accomplish that goal, in October 2023, an RFP was released to help us identify a consultant to bring it all together, to serve as sort of the project coordinator with multiple consultants in collaboration. And that ultimately was Placerbia Design. We also coordinated with Kimley Horn, which was assigned by NCDOT to develop the multimodal transportation plan, and proactively increased the scope there of the multimodal transportation plan to ensure that it also included vehicular elements in addition to transit, bike, and pedestrian modes, so that it could serve as that mobility chapter of the comp plan. And then lastly, we requested a proposal from Withers Ravenel to work on not just the sewer capacity study that was already underway, but in fact a utility forecasting model that would help us figure out how to best and proactively plan for our future as it related to the sewer needs in our community. With all of that, as you might recall, back in March of 2024, we presented all of that information to you along with those contracts, and council approved all 3 contracts, which allowed us to move forward with this 3-pronged approach to plan development. Where we are today is that we have now the comprehensive land use plan, the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan, the multimodal transportation plan, and a utility forecasting model that have all been concurrently developed and codependent on one another, with the consultants collaborating throughout the entire plan development process. And I'm excited to share that each one of these plans will be summarized in detail for you all this evening.
With, of course, a mind for revenue as well.
Of course. And so, with that being said, while I will default to the direction of council for how you'd like to proceed, we would welcome the opportunity to present all of those planning efforts to you, each independently, and then have a larger discussion planned after you've been able to hear from each of the consultants to better understand how those planning efforts worked together for the final recommendations within each of them. So again, they folded into each other, and so one of the other pieces of this is that while the scope included an update of the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan, it does not forget that we also have small area plans that are already adopted within the 2018 plan. Those are the Montcross, Center City, and South Fork Small Area Plans. Originally, these documents were embedded within the larger comprehensive land use plan themselves. What that meant is that in order for those small area plans to be updated, we would effectively need to update the full body of the comprehensive land use plan. So what you'll see is instead the proposed structure is to remove those from the larger body of the comprehensive land use plan document and adopt them separately as standalone plans. However, those 3 particular plans are still the existing ones with the exact same language that we had in place in 2018. What this will allow us to do is, based on the direction of council, update those as we see fit as independent small area plans, and we can do that at whatever timing makes the most sense for appropriate growth within the city. At the core of this entire effort was community engagement. It was planning staff and council, from what we heard, top priority. And so we took that assignment and did our best to make sure that we had a robust community engagement strategy leading back from when we first began in April 2024 with our project website launch, hosting several citywide workshops, and then character area workshops where we went out into the community in various locations, both down at Daniel Stowe Botanical Gardens, North Belmont Elementary, and I believe at TechWorks as well. We had some online surveys and final open houses, and what we are really proud of on this is, instead of having independent community engagement events for each one of the plans being presented, that information was available at each one of these opportunities. And so if someone came to a community engagement event, they would be able to share their thoughts and opinions on any topic that was important or relevant to them, whether it was transportation or land use or utilities and infrastructure. And so we gathered that information and then compiled that and shared it with all of the consultant teams so that it can inform the work that they ultimately will present to you. Again, this is just a recap. So in addition to those formal events, we did do some community event booths where we both solicited feedback, but also just shared information about the efforts underway to make sure that we were letting people know about what we're doing and how to get involved with that. That went from informal events like farmers markets all the way up to just even the skateboard competition, the Garibaldi Festival, and then there was a video trailer that actually played multiple times at Movies in the Park to get folks excited about this effort and what it could mean for our community. As a reminder, we also took a bus tour with council and planning board members, and in addition to the online surveys that Proserbia did, there was also some transportation-specific ones floated before recommendations. So there are just some photos of some of the community engagement events to show that we really wanted to be intentional about listening to the community as the first priority prior to the development and update of any of the plans, and we hope that the contents within those plans reflect those goals. The purpose of all of these plans ultimately is to determine the proposed development that is consistent with what the city wants to see. Again, with the goal of prioritizing the voice of the community and its stakeholders when we make decisions, whether that's administrative decisions or decisions presented to City Council. It helps to plan for future capital investments by knowing where we want to go and then allowing us to map a route of how to get there. Provides a better understanding of the staffing needs that will be required as we grow with that level of intensity of land use and what the infrastructure needs might be. Allows us to coordinate with departments for successful implementation of the community's vision, and then also allows us to share what our vision is as a community with regional stakeholders to ensure that our voice is heard when it comes to regional coordination. With all that said, I did want to take a moment to honor 3 men that I believe are worth sincere dedication of this planning effort. We would not be where we are today, both as a city and everything that stands for, but certainly in the planning efforts and the future visions that our community has. And so if it's okay with City Council, I'd like to read a few words about each of these men and then honor their families.
Absolutely.
These 3 men, Alec Robinson, Richard Turner, and Charlie Martin, have helped to lay the foundation for our community's success. Since the adoption of the 2018 Comprehensive Land Use Plan, these 3 instrumental planning leaders and champions helped to shape what Belmont is today, and we are sad and lost that they are no longer with us. Alex Robinson, Richard Turner, and Charlie Martin, each within their respective roles, served as champions for the Belmont community and worked tirelessly to make the city the best it could be. This comprehensive plan update, in all of its parts, seeks to carry out their legacy and celebrate our heritage while embracing opportunities to shape our future. The first one I'd like to recognize is Alex Robinson. Alex dedicated the better part of his long career to the city of Belmont, provided 25 years of service to this community as an employee. Prior to becoming a staff member, Alex served as an active member of the Belmont Planning and Zoning Board, where he assisted with the adoption of the city's visionary form-based code back in 1995. Much of Alex's work was done behind the scenes, but that work was key to Belmont's success. While on the staff, he assisted with the development of the city's first comprehensive land use plan in 2007, the subsequent land development code update in 2008, and the 2018 comprehensive land use plan update. Alec was also instrumental in the initial stages of the development of this plan update prior to his passing. He was best known for his historic and institutional knowledge about this community and served as an incredible asset not only to our planning department, but to the members and the citizens at large. The next I would like to dedicate this plan to is Mayor Richard Turner. Mayor Turner faithfully served the citizens of Belmont for more than 2 decades, serving 2 terms on the Belmont Planning and Zoning Board and 2 terms on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board before beginning his political career. He was elected to City Council in 2013 and served 9 years as a council member before being elected as mayor in 2023, a role he was honored to serve until his passing. His unwavering dedication was evident in his constant presence at civic events, in addition to his participation for many years on various boards and committees. He advocated and made notable progress in transportation initiatives and sustainable growth practices. Throughout his tenure, he worked tirelessly to make Belmont an ideal place to live, work, and to raise a family. And lastly is Mayor Charlie Martin. Mayor Martin represented the city of Belmont as an elected official for over 2 decades. He began as a council member in 2001, serving 12 years prior to being elected as mayor in 2013. Charlie represented Belmont as mayor until his retirement in 2023, serving with humility and dedication. He also served on several local civic boards throughout the years. His leadership helped to transform Belmont into one of North Carolina's most vibrant small towns. In addition to his accomplishments, Charlie was the voice of South Point High School's football for many years and a passionate coach who led Babe Ruth League baseball teams to 2 state championships. He also founded Belmont's first youth soccer program in 1976 and coached for 24 years. His lifelong efforts were recognized in 2025 when Governor Josh Stein awarded him the Order of the Longleaf Pine, North Carolina's highest civilian honor. We have lost as a community 3 great men since our 2018 comprehensive land use plan has gotten adopted. And so it was our department's honor to be able to not forget their legacy and to present plans to you that we hope help to encourage and support the foundation that they lay before us. And so with that, I would just like to invite the families of each of those 3 up. I have a small certificate of appreciation, and then we can get started, but I just wanted to publicly say thank you to them and their families for all the support.
Thank you.
Very well said.
Yeah.
You all would like to come forward? You don't have to, so I can just drop this off if you don't want to, but we'd love to say thank you.
So do we want to take a photo?
It's up to them
Do you
if they
guys
want a
want to
picture or
move?
not.
Get a photo.
I guess. Yeah, there you go. I'm not usually.
You'll probably want to stand in the middle right there, let council get a picture.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
thank you to staff for honoring those three men and their legacies and all they've done for Belmont.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing us to take that moment. The first consultant I'd like to bring up, yes.
Before you do that, I have kind of a leading question on
Okay.
some of the things that you just went over. By the way, tremendous thanks to you and your staff. I know this is a massive, many months undertaking, and we really appreciate all of your involvement. This was a very classy and appropriate move, and I
Thank you.
commend you all for doing that, because we're three stalwarts in Belmont's growth over decades, and we appreciate all their contributions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So the question I had was, you had a slide about where you were going to be sort of extracting the smaller plans from the master comp
That's
plan,
right.
the multimodal utility and the small area plan for Wilkinson. And I think that makes a lot of sense, and I can see the rationale behind it. I guess my question is, how do you ensure that sort of the overarching theme of the comp plan can still govern?
Sure. That's a great question. So within the comprehensive land use plan, there are still references to the small area plans. And so then those small area plans will just be separately adopted so that they can thrive as their own standalone plan, but they are cross-referenced within that. So the comprehensive land use plan and its larger entirety will point people to go and find that, and it would point staff to do the same as well.
Thank you.
I have just maybe one question for those watching at home. Maybe just sort of set the stage in this introduction for the role of the comprehensive land use plan, especially vis-a-vis the land development code, which every time, somebody wants to apply for a rezone or change the code, we obviously are very concerned with the provisions of that code. So what's this effort in relation to the LDC, which we encounter frequently at our meetings?
Sure. So the difference primarily is that the Land Development Code outlines the specific regulations someone needs to follow if they want to develop what is typically called by right? So in order to do that, we have to outline specific rules of development that they need to play by. And those normally are much more detail-oriented. The Comprehensive Land Use Plan is a visioning document, which means it sets forth the future trajectory. So some things in here are envisioned not that saying that we're ready for them today or even tomorrow, but we set the vision for what we think Belmont should be in 5 to 10 years from now, and in some cases even longer. So with that being said, sometimes there's things that are envisioned in the Comprehensive Land Use Plan that might not align with what the current zoning would allow today. And when that happens, development communities or developers, or even an individual property owner in some cases, can petition City Council to look at updating the zoning to allow for their idea that might be in line with our future vision to be considered, so that we as a community can determine, is it the right time? Does it make sense for us to do that now? And does it align with our future vision? And do we understand what it's going to take in order to make that a possibility if they would like to propose that today? And so it doesn't necessarily tell us in the comprehensive land use plan things like how many feet a side setback should be. But what it tells us is, in this general area, should we consider residential? Should we consider commercial? And if we do, what kinds of forms would seem to be appropriate? What is the street frontage condition look like? And what I mean by that isn't necessarily like specific setbacks, but what's the feel? Is it pedestrian in nature when you're walking down like downtown Belmont, for example? Or is this more of an autocentric corridor similar to Wilkinson where we would expect a different look and feel? And so it's setting that kind of high-level vision for how we want things to develop over time. And ultimately, when things do come before you that are maybe more visionary or might be in alignment with the vision, but aren't currently allowable by code, those all come through conditional zoning requests, in which case council has the opportunity to look at each development proposal and make an individual determination of that. And with those, we are required to ask you to make a finding that it's not only reasonable and in the public's best interest, but that it's consistent with the goals of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan Update, which is this document here, as well as all other long-range plans, which is inclusive of the Multimodal Transportation Plan and other long-range holistic documents that we have in place.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? All right, so I believe we were going to transition then from item C1 to C2, which I have as land use-based comprehensive infrastructure decision model, LUCID. Is that what you were going to do?
That is correct. We're going to turn it over to Eddie to share a little bit more about what all of those words mean.
Right, excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
So that would be Eddie Staley with Withers Ravenel. Yes. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, great to be with you again, and you've already kind of titled this off of land use-based comprehensive infrastructure decision model. And I'm going to speak to you 2 times tonight. This is sort of my first time. I'm going to kind of set the table, and then I'll come back near the end and talk about the results or the findings from the comprehensive land use plan. Ultimately, what we're doing is building a digital twin of the sanitary sewer system and how it interacts with your land use planning, how it interacts with transportation. It's helping you understand this vision that you're adopting. What is the infrastructure that has to come along with it for that vision to be reality? And so that's ultimately what I want us to focus on initially. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I was with you not too long ago talking about the hydraulic model for the sanitary sewer system. So you're already up to speed on that. But what I do want to tell you here, or make sure that we understand, is one of the great things that's happening in this plan is lots of information and studies that have happened over the years or in the most recent past. All of that is basically coming in one place, single source of truth. And so it's building that alignment. I think Tiffany mentioned it very well, is it's no longer in a silo. Everything is interacting together. Because where we encourage development, where we make those investments for development, every one of those things plays off the other. The other thing I do want to point out on this slide really quickly, I believe the last time we were together, we talked about different level of service targets. And one of those things that it sounded like we aligned on was that 5-year storm event, right, is where we kind of align. And so everything is based off of that. The really nice thing with this model that we're talking about, Lucid, is it is interactive, and the staff has access to this. And so as vision changes, or maybe that 5-year becomes a 2-year plan, or a 2-year storm event, or something else, we can change that in one place and immediately start to understand what the impacts of those decisions are. And so that's the main thing I want you to take away from the model. And when I come back up, we'll actually kind of show a live demonstration of this and how the staff can use this to better inform you about the decisions that you're making and the impacts of those decisions that you're making when it comes to development. Again, sort of that what-if scenario. So in the first phase of this, what we really did was took that 2018 existing land use plan that you have now and started to pull all these layers of information together and looking at remaining developable land. By the way, in your planning and jurisdictional area, there's about 1,400 acres of uncommitted, undeveloped, or redevelopable land remaining. So that's a really good number to kind of know. That's maybe a little bit conservative. There are certainly single-family homes that a developer could come in and buy up a whole block and totally change the use of that. Or, there's many different ways that could exist. But when you look at kind of raw redevelopable land or really underserved land, there's about 1,400 acres, not including things that have already been adopted or in the planning stages. We also come in and remove all environmental constraints, stream buffers, wetlands, setbacks, utility easements. So that is real, raw, developable land, actually actionable land. We then took the existing land use and the density, kind of allowed density for each one of those land use categories in that 2018 plan, and then basically started to use that to put demands back into that sanitary sewer model. We went a little bit conservative using 300 gallons per day. Generally speaking, it's about 120 gallons per bathroom or per restroom in a home. So generally speaking, that number is around 360. But we base that off of existing usage inside the city today. That's basically what an average home uses today. That information goes back into the hydraulic model that we talked about before. We also were able to get more of that extraneous flow, that I&I information, as well to help define this. And we start to basically understand where those choke points are, where those bottlenecks are in the system underneath your existing land use today. One of the other things that happened as part of this, and the staff is using this today, is called Lift Command. And this is the combination of planning information being joined in with public utility information. So as soon as a development is being under consideration, we can immediately put it inside Lift Command, start saying, hey, does this flow need to be reserved? It creates better coordination and collaboration between the planning department and the utility department, so that utility can be as close to the beginning of that process as possible, kind of preventing some of those surprises. One of the things that you notice here on the screen, you'll see kind of orange and red boxes. Those are visual triggers back to the utility department to say, hey, this is something kind of important. This may be a problem. Let's take a deeper dive here. So if we go into this particular tool, we won't do that tonight. Every one of your lift stations are in here, how they're connected together. And one of the main things that is really important is when you're looking at a development, it's not just affecting the pipe that it's connected to. It's there and everything downstream from it. And every sewer system is complex. Belmont's system is actually a little bit more complex than many around. You have a lot of lift stations that actually daisy chain to pump from one station to another station to another station. And so whenever we look at development in different places of the city, they have different impacts. The same type of property, same type of use in one side of town could be, a huge challenge, where on the other side of town it may not be a challenge at all. And so again, this is what the Lucid model kind of brings together. We'll come back and talk about this more when I come back up and show this live. But I wanted you to understand the basis that went behind it. Why did we do all this work? Well, ultimately, this was for us to basically give one of these factors back to Placervia as they began this work. Certainly, you want the public input. The staff wants your input. What is your vision for the city of Belmont? But also, infrastructure is another one of those factors. And sewer certainly is one of those factors that really can be a major inhibitor to growth. If we do not have that underground infrastructure in place to support the growth, ultimately our vision can't be achieved. And so this information was given back over to Placervia as one of those factor points. And if you notice the graphic on the side, kind of small, but I think you can get the picture. As I always love to say, green's good, red's bad, yellow's kind of in between, bright purple is a little bit more severe. Based on your 2018 plan, this is where those areas of opportunity and areas of challenge existed. Red were challenging, orange and others are maybe not quite as challenging. And so that was one of those factors that was provided to Placervia. As I kind of wrap this section up, again, I'll be back with you at the end. Are there any questions before I turn it over to Nat? Because he's going to talk specifically about the transportation infrastructure beyond that. Yes, sir.
So this tool is something that we're going to be able to use in-house now, right? Or do we have to engage with Withers Ravenel to use it, or is it something kind of...
Your staff has access to it today.
Right.
We're certainly there as a partner to help update or maintain or do anything that needs to happen with it. But yeah, as we show this later on, it will become a very powerful tool for them to be able to provide you better information and understand the impacts of the decisions that you're making as a council, a financial impact.
It's great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, are you saying, basically, if we get a new development proposal down the road, would this be something that you could plug that information into your model and determine whether there'd be sufficient sewer capacity to support it?
That's correct, and how much investment needs to be made to get the adequate capacity to serve it as a prorated. Because again, no property is existing on its own, right? It's a piece of the bigger part of the city, and it's not, it's not typical practice to put all that burden back on one developer, but it's a contributing factor. So yeah, we'll actually go into some of those numbers as I come back up.
And I imagine you would be able to make that determination now with this model a lot more efficiently and rapidly than where we are.
That is correct. That is correct. And it's on a parcel by parcel basis, so we're grouping the parcels. So it is very granular in nature. It's not just, well, this area is risk.
So the alignment that this affords us as a city and going forward and considering various developments, this all sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
But I guess I would ask, in the maybe municipalities you've dealt with that have maybe implemented this? I don't know how much history you have behind it with other clients. Can you comment on kind of before and after results and 30,000-foot level that you've seen, or?
Sure, yeah, one of the cities that I've worked with, City of Sanford, this was actually featured in the American Public Works magazine as a lead article back in 2023 on the City of Sanford. And we did the exact same thing. They had actually already adopted the plan, and one of the things we talked about after that, what they actually adopted was a $41 million sanitary sewer investment plan, and didn't know that. Didn't understand that that plan came with a lot of necessary investment to be able to meet the vision of that plan. And so this really became an important factor for that city. Vic Czar, who's actually the assistant manager there now, was the city engineer at the time, was very instrumental in really working side by side with us to say, this is how we think as a city and how we make decisions. And so, I consider him a very close partner when we developed this, several years ago. There are some other communities that we work with, and in some communities, sewer is not the issue, sometimes it's water. It can also be, if we're gonna do this development, we need to understand we gotta build a new fire station. We're gonna have to build a new park, because when that development happens, they're gonna want a public park. What about our sidewalks? What about our streets? So right now, this one is really focused on sewer, but it has the ability over time to basically take in every bit of infrastructure that is required to basically support development. And understand the cost of development. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Other questions?
All right, thank you, we'll see you again
See
later.
you again soon, and I'll turn it over to Matt to talk
Yes.
about the,
Before we do that, this is item C3. This is actually a public hearing on multimodal transportation plan with Kimley Horn. So there will be some procedural formalities, such as a motion to go into public hearing.
I'll make a motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Alex, second by Jason. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are now in public hearing. Thank you. And to present this for Kimley Horn, we have Nat Hayward.
Excellent. Thank you guys for your time, and thank you, Eddie, for the tee up there. Building off Eddie's presentation, as you can imagine, really critical part of our infrastructure, our growth plan for the community is transportation. And Tiffany teed this up as well. Our effort was to develop a multimodal plan that looked at comprehensively at all modes of transportation here in Belmont, and align that process with the development of the comprehensive plan. Essentially align our transportation growth strategy with our land use and infrastructure growth strategy. And to date, Belmont didn't have that sort of unifying transportation vision. So that's the one of the main purposes of this document is to kind of establish that shared vision, the community's vision, that's supported by the feedback that we hear from the community, as well as the analysis and data collection that go into that. And then also to align with the comprehensive plan itself. So like Tiffany said, we have a standalone mobility plan that gets adopted as a standalone document, but it also is rolled up in a high level into the land use plan update, as well as a transportation chapter. So our process is really simple. Those of you who've been through many planning processes before, none of this is going to seem like rocket science to you. Broken down into 3 really simple phases. The first is all about understanding what the future vision for the community is, as well as the needs are. So we kind of break that down into public engagement and more technical kind of analysis, right? And so what does the data tell us? What does the public tell us about what the needs are? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And building off of that, we sort of use that as our foundation for crafting a set of recommendations that ultimately fill out the plan. And so those recommendations are organized around projects within the plan. Essentially, those are lines on a map, right, where we know that we need improvements to transportation. Those are the prioritization of those projects, providing guidance about what we know we want to invest in first, and then the plan or the policies, programs, actions that support the implementation of what's in the plan itself. And Third phase is all about documenting, pulling that all together, creating a standalone planning document, aligning it with the comp plan, working through that comp plan chapter as well, and then going through the adoption processes. Throughout that whole processes, we have really intentional touch points for engagement within each phase, and we had a steering committee that helped to guide our process, and so that steering committee is made up of kind of a wide range of stakeholders and community representation. You can see that on the screen now. We had coordination with agency partners like NCDOT, county representatives, Carolina Thread Trail. We also had local representatives from the community, representation from staff in various departments within the city. And so this, to those that participated in this group, I want to thank them all again for their time, for the dedication of the process. They were really instrumental in helping to guide us at key milestones in the process to make sure that we had a great sounding board of folks who had stake in the community, understood the dynamics locally and also regionally to ensure that the planning process moved smoothly. More broadly, I want to touch really briefly on engagement for the multimodal plan. Tiffany kind of went through the huge breadth of effort over the past 18 months of engagement, kind of focused on the land use plan update, and all along the way, the multimodal plan process was there as well. So anywhere where you saw the comp plan engaging with people, we were there. We had surveys that we had shared questions in and things like that. But in addition to all of that effort for engagement over the past 18 months, we also had our own multimodal plan specific survey, which yielded another 450 plus participants. We got great data from those folks and feel really good about the feedback that we heard from residents. You can see some of it here on screen. We heard, not surprisingly, congestion is a major topic for folks. In addition to that, we really like to dig into trade-off questions. When we're talking about infrastructure investment, specifically in transportation, we often focus on trade-offs because these are expensive improvements that take a lot of time to implement, design, construct. And so we have to be really intentional at this step in the process about understanding what trade-offs the community wants us to make. And so we ask about congestion relief versus safety improvement versus multimodal connectivity versus active transportation, and use that feedback to help prioritize the improvements we put into the plan itself. We also heard that most participants want to see sort of a balance of investment between the sort of larger visionary capital projects and also smaller scale maintenance improvements, small connections and things like that. So balance between those. And then also there's a desire for some improved multimodal connectivity. That's active transportation, walking, biking, trails, greenways, as well as improved transit access in the future as well. All in all, I think given the engagement conducted along with the comprehensive plan process, as well as the extra engagement we did with the multimodal plan, I think we were super excited about the volume of participation we got, the quality of participation we got, the opportunity for people to engage in a variety of in-person digital platforms all across the board. Was really great to see, and we feel really, really confident in what we received. So the plan itself, this is a kind of a really high-level outline breakdown of the chapters within the plan, really following that kind of three-phase process that I laid out for you earlier. Understanding our vision and needs, breaking down the recommendations of prioritization within the plan, and then talking about the implementation and opportunities for future funding. So I want to touch on kind of those main kind of key elements of the recommendations here really briefly. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go super into depth into any of these, but happy to answer questions afterwards. So like I said, our recommendations are really broken down into these three buckets. Projects, what are the lines on the map that we know we need to help kind of achieve our future vision? What's the prioritization of those projects within the plan? And what's the policy and actions that we can use to implement the recommendations within the plan itself? And so what you're seeing here are screenshots from the planning document. We broke down the projects and recommendations across 4 different modes: roadway projects, bicycle projects, pedestrian projects, and transit improvements. And so we kind of followed that formulaic approach throughout. Here you can see the roadway recommendations, as well as the types of roadway projects that we recommend. Here you can see the pedestrian network, sidewalks, shared use paths, bicycle facilities, bike lanes, shared use lanes, in some cases separated bike lanes and paved shoulders, as well as some high-level transit recommendations, identifying some locations for future mobility hubs, providing some guidance about supporting microtransit in the region and that sort of thing. Additionally, we also wanted to identify kind of a core set of projects, which we call demonstration projects, to provide a higher level of detail and analysis on. And the way we did this was to essentially take 10 of our higher priorities projects and identify them as demonstration projects and drill in. So we, gave a more detailed overview of the project, or what would be involved with that particular project, any high-level considerations or constraints, challenges that would be associated with that. We conducted planning-level cost estimates using an NCDOT approved tool, and showcased kind of an illustrative cross-section of what the future corridors might look like. And so we did this across 10 projects that are within the plan, 5 of which are roadway-focused projects, 5 of which are bike ped projects. And then finally, we've got to prioritize those projects. And so our goal here is to create, as best we can, a simple, repeatable methodology for prioritization. The goal here being that once the plan is developed and the team developing the plan is gone, that staff has the tools to add new projects in and prioritize them in the same list. And so what you see on screen here is on the right, those 7 bullets are kind of categorically the things that we use within our prioritization methodology. So under each one of those headings there, we identified 1, 2, or 3 criteria that we can actually measure to address those particular themes. And within each of those themes, we would roll up the scores and then weight the overall scores for each one of those themes there. And so you can see those weights on the right-hand side of the column there. Those were developed in collaboration with our steering committee. I think one other thing I'll say here too is the goal with this approach is to create a methodology that we feel confident aligns with what the communities tell us is important, right? And so it allows staff, allows elected officials to make defensible decisions about what we move forward with first, because we know, based on our community engagement, based on what we heard from the public, that these are the things that are most important to them, and so that's what we're measuring to determine what we want to invest in first. And here you can see, again, a screenshot from the plan, just a representation of what that looks like in the plan, where we've taken all of the projects for the roadway improvements and sorted them into tiers. You can see on that table there on the left side of the page, and then map those appropriately. The goal here is not to provide a strict ranking of projects necessarily, but sort of a grouping of different priority tiers to give you all the guidance on to know what to implement first, but also the flexibility to move within those tiers as needed. Bottom line is, if you've got resources and political will to implement project number 3 on the list, but project number 2 isn't implemented yet, this list won't hold you back from doing that, right? And then finally, we've got our policies and actions, and these are all represented directly within the land use plan update as well. We have identified 8 kind of high-level policies to drive implementation of the planning process. Along with each policy, we have a set of several supporting kind of key actions that are aimed to directly implement and align with that particular policy. So I'll go through these at a really high level again. I don't want to get hung up on specifics due to the time constraints, but I'll roll through these fairly briefly. So first is to promote solutions to manage existing and future congestion. We want to improve local neighborhood connectivity to enhance access to transportation options. We want to improve roadway safety for all. This is largely about implementing the recommendations that come out of the recently adopted Vision Zero plan. So we're pulling that forward, leveraging that as well. enhance safe access to schools. We want to strengthen regional transportation connectivity. We want to explore opportunities to provide additional transit options. We want to invest in and promote transportation options that enhance quality of life. This is where we get into some sustainability and environmental goals. And then we want to align transportation policies with local and regional planning goals to make sure that we are moving forward towards that shared vision for our community, but also being a part of the larger region as well. Our next steps are the adoption here tonight, and then, like Tiffany said, this process was funded in part through a grant from the NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division. So once the plan's adopted, it will go to them for their information. They'll provide a high-level review. There's typically no real edits that come out of those kinds of reviews, and then we'll provide the data to them. They'll put it in their statewide database. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you.
I do actually. So when this is sent to NCDOT, obviously I know the way that they're looking at road projects, because a lot of the roads you had on there were state roads, right? Where we need their funding pretty much to do that. Do they take this into account for any of their scoring or prioritization, or is this just we'll file it away for later as reference?
No, they absolutely take it into account. Having a project listed within a local plan is absolutely one of their critical scoring criteria across a ton of different prioritization processes or grant opportunities that they may provide.
And then I guess this would also be shared with the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO as well,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
For their long-term plan.
Exactly, and as you saw, they were part of our steering committee as well. Tori Bellinger with GCL and PO was a key partner for us. And so when those MPO processes come about and they're looking for projects to be submitted as part of their plans, this is the tool that the city would use to go immediately to and say, hey, here's our next 4 projects that we're up for. We want to submit those into GCL and PO's prioritization or long-range plan, whatever that might be.
Well, a lot of those projects have been on and off that, right,
Sure.
for a long time. So, but okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would note, you talked about your demonstration projects in the plan itself. When your description of the considerations and constraints for the Woodrow Avenue project, you're actually describing Woodlawn. So I think that needs to be up.
Okay, we'll make sure we don't typo there.
Yes, it's page 71.
Okay, good catch.
If there's no other questions, and I would also note that this is a public hearing. We have no one signed up for public comment. There being no other questions, I would entertain a motion to come out of public
Motion
hearing.
to come out of public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You're out of public hearing. Thank you, Matt.
Now I'll turn it over to Michael and Dylan.
Yes. So what we have here is item C4, another public hearing, this one as to the comprehensive land use plan update. And to present this, we have from Men Design Company, Michael Dunning, and from Placervia Design, Dylan Gehring. Before we get started, I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Second. Motion made by Alex, seconded by everyone else who's here. And all those...
That can go into the minutes.
Yeah, all right, Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Catherine's not here, but she'll be recorded as yes. Is that correct, Parks?
Yes.
Okay. So we are now in public hearing. Off we go.
Fantastic. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, my name is Michael Dunning. I'm the principal founder of Men Design Collaborative. I'm representing the firm as co-lead with Placervia. I'm going to just take a few minutes here to tee up our conversation about the comp plan itself. First, I want to thank you all. I want to thank your stakeholders. I want to thank your constituents. We do this all over the country, been doing it for a long time, and frankly, this was the most robust, energized, thorough process that I think we've seen. So I want to thank you for that. Chapter 160D of the state statutes requires us to do this, of course, but at the same time, we see it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you all as a city to reflect, to reset, and to aspire. And we've been doing this for 18 months. I'm so thankful to be able to do that with you and to deliver this to you. As you may know, we got unanimous approval from planning and zoning, and staff has been part of this from the beginning, doing fantastic work. I want to just talk a little bit about what we learned during the community engagement process. Again, robust. It was a fantastic, lengthy process. Again, more involved and more layers to it than I think that we've ever seen. Over 2,000 comments from all of our inputs, so all the public engagement sessions, the website, all the surveys. 2,000 comments. Now that's not individuals, but that's still a lot of folks. That represents about a 10-fold increase in participation over the 2018 plan process, give or take a little bit. We don't have the finer metrics from 2018, but just as a ballpark, we're excited about that. The process yielded all kinds of takeaways, some anecdotal, some more fact-based. As you'll see in some of the graphics that I'll present here, some things are repetitive, a lot of themes, a lot of ideas, a lot of comments. And again, I want to commend the citizenry, your stakeholders, a group of folks that are very self-aware. The comments that we got tell us that the citizens of Belmont really understand where they live, they understand the threats, if you will, they understand the opportunities, they understand where they live and the challenges ahead, and gave us really good feedback. I'm not going to read every slide again, there's time, happy to answer questions as we go along. This is all in anticipation of introducing Dylan Gary with Plus Servia here in a moment to go into more detail. So I'm going to ask questions at that point. We asked what 3 words best describe Belmont. This is under the big umbrella of our Belmont. We even, of course, came up with a logo for this effort to really champion the idea that we're all in this together. You can see the words on the screen. These are not all positive words. There's words in there that you can see are a little scary, things like overcrowded and expensive. Traffic congestion, always a theme, right? So we show this, and these are weighted relative to the number of responses that we did get. So overall, you'll see that the terms like growing and quaint and charming appear regularly there throughout our responses. What we've done then is taken these responses and taken things and come up with categories of themes. We call them primary themes to our Belmont. Again, we'll go into more depth here, and I won't read all of these, but 5 themes that were part of the takeaways. Everyone recognizes that you live on a peninsula. So how do we champion that? How do we champion where we live geographically? How do we maintain the environmental quality and the open space that's inherent to where we live? Champion local businesses and entrepreneurship was a common theme relative to the economy. Strengthen local infrastructure. This is something that Nat touched on relative to traffic transportation. It's not just traffic transportation, roads and so forth. It's sidewalks. It's all things that go into making community function, operate, and make it whole. Prioritize environmental integrity. Again, common theme, very related to the first 2. Protecting against soil erosion. A lot of themes there relative to, again, the fact that on Peninsula, as we increase density, increase impervious area, that becomes a challenge. Low density developments, looking at a way to use clustering, for instance, as a way to handle the inevitable density questions that are going to come up both in terms of housing and commercial development. Land dedication, how can the city get involved in dedicating land, for the purposes of ensuring open space preservation, and working with the partnerships that do exist. The waterfront, again, you live on a peninsula, you've got, I think it's 27 miles of waterfront that, to various degrees, is not being capitalized on either public-private development. How can we plan for new destinations on those waterfronts? How can we strengthen the linkages between places that are more inland and the waterfront itself? Trails, things that they're doing down at the Stowe Botanical Garden, or the Stowe Conservatory now, all came to mind. Seemed to be a fan favorite amongst all the stakeholders. Blue Ray tourism, another theme that came about, this idea of actually using the waterways for more than just recreation. And lastly, expanding appropriate housing choices. Prior to us getting involved in this, you all had commissioned a missing middle housing study that wrapped and concluded right when we got started. That informed a lot of what you'll see in the comp plan relative to housing and density calculations, and understanding that from a forward-looking standpoint. Traditional neighborhood development, which is actually in a response to your 1995 form-based code, which led the way with regard to those types of typologies when it comes to neighborhood development. And then all those takeaways then led us into a series of more detail that Dylan will go into here, and also the Wilkinson Small Area Plan, Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan that we'll go to. We'll get to here in a moment. Again, key overview. I want to thank you for our opportunity to be involved the past 18 months. It's been very rewarding in many ways. So with that, unless there are any questions with this overview, I'll turn this over to Dylan to go into more detail.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Oh, what's that water bottle you got there?
Actually, why don't you grab me the blank one, just so we don't make this controversial?
You won't want to thought Jim wanted.
No.
Yeah, we had booze on Saturday.
Yeah, that was I didn't think you'd want to, be touting your Clemson pride.
Just be a fair weather fan. Come on, I gotta commit.
Good call out, Jim.
All right, thank you guys. So if we jump back into this, I'll bring us home on the comprehensive plan and then talk a little bit about the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan. This plan will be in place regardless of how the Clemson season turns out, so just make sure you're all paying attention. All right, so we broke this out into a summary of key differences here between our Belmont, the one that we're proposing for adoption here tonight, and the previous plan. The main theme really is that we're reorganizing this entire plan so it no longer reads like a cover-to-cover novel, but instead it's more like a paginated thing that's grouped into sections that's very easy to follow. So it's structured into 11 sections. We'll get into that a little bit with a little brief overview of them, but that is the main thing. So here the idea is you want to read about land use, open section 3, go to land use. You see something that references natural resources that catches your eye, turn to section 10, environment. It should be very easy to use. Nobody will have to read through the whole thing. We actually went so far as to switching to calling each part of the document sections instead of chapters, just to get as far away from that novel as possible. So as part of that, the recommended projects and policies that are going before you guys are actually brought to the forefront of each of those sections. So in that second spread and sometimes third spread, it'll be very easy to see, okay, here's the project, here's the policy, this is how it goes together, and just kind of use that as a quick index or a quick guide. Beyond that, it integrates more user-friendly graphics and common language. We want this to be as accessible as possible. And then the small area plans, like Tiffany touched on a bit before, were moved to an independent document, so those can be independently updated, replaced, or have new ones added without kind of messing up the entire comprehensive plan. Probably should have been that way since the beginning, but it is that way now as before you. So, from here, this is just an overview of the plan organization. This is actually a spread that's in the document. Luckily, you're not expected to read all of this on the PowerPoint slide. I know it's very small, but it is just really about the 11 sections that we have before you. So there's those two kind of turquoise sections that are an introduction and a history section that kind of give a little bit of overview and entryway into the rest of the plan content. And then there's those 9 plan sections that are separated out by topic. Of course, they cross-reference each other, but this is the way that we came up to organize it. And you'll see these little boxes, we call them tiles, kind of carry through the entire plan, so it's easy to know what section you're in at any given time. Here's just an overview of kind of how the projects and policies look. So this slide has kind of the vision for each of those different sections. So this one's economy, and again, it's easy to look at those overarching policies and then the recommended projects that are there to help them be implemented as swiftly and most effectively as possible. And then we have kind of just a highlight here. You guys have looked through the plan, you've seen this before. This is just an example of how we've integrated graphics. We're not having entire page images that are adding, tens and hundreds of extra pages to the document. It's just kind of there as an accent. We blew up the maps larger, removed some distracting detail there, and there's a clear hierarchy of headings, kind of subheaders, and then those section tiles that run along with each one of them. Then lastly, this is actually my favorite part, it all points back to public engagement. So not only does the introduction have an overview of how the public engagement process was conducted at the beginning of this study, each section actually has the relevant community engagement takeaways appended to the end of it in kind of a form that's graphical, it's more accessible, it's easier for folks who made specific recommendations to see those recommendations actually represented within the plan, and it's a lot more fun to look at, a lot more engaging. People will go through it. You don't want to see the 5,000 comment Excel spreadsheet we have tucked away, but it is here, and that's something that will go along with it as well. But we're excited about this. So with that foundation, I'm just going to run through a little tidbit on each of these comp plan sections so that you all are kind of familiar with each of those 11 topics there. We have about 2 per slide, so we'll try to keep it pretty quick, try to keep it pretty light, until, of course, you guys are feeling like you want to ask some questions that are more in-depth if something comes out or sticks out to you. So introduction's the most basic. Michael already talked about, there's state reasons to update the comprehensive plan, but also there's, of course, city reasons too. A lot has changed very rapidly since the 2018 plan. We've had a pandemic, there's been some other things that have shifted, some state legislation around housing has shifted, so it makes sense to update the plan now. So it has that, it has the community engagement process documented as well. The history, the whole thing there is that's a foundation for looking at Belmont's past, discussing the opportunities of its location, its transportation investments that helped shape the city, the history of mill villages, and kind of what was most successful in the 2018 plan, and how that history positions Belmont for today. So with that base, land use is the first one of those content sections. So there's 4 main ideas here. Very briefly, Eddie talked about how Belmont is, of course, running out of land in a little bit of a way, running into water on some sides, running into neighbors on another side. We have a defined planning area, and so figuring out how to use that leftover acreage is extremely important. So there's that. So planning for how to use what's left is key, and that kind of theme, of course, carries through. Beyond that, leveraging this huge investment of private investment that's coming in, this big influx of that, can be something that can very effectively be leveraged to score benefits for the entire community. We think probably one of the best examples of that currently is the Del Webb development. They have been able to help build out portions of the South Fork Parkway in a way that's helped Belmont make that key infrastructure investment. They've donated some land for public open space, and they've activated some of that waterfront with some trails in their plan as well. So just trying to do more of that when there's a large development proposal that comes in, how that can be leveraged to get as much publicly beneficial outcome from that is key. Of course, we'll talk a lot about environmental preservation. That was something that was identified as core to Belmont's identity. Making sure we're having maximum tree save and those sorts of things. Where there are mixed uses, those should be concentrated in village centers or areas that can actually handle that type of activity. So just making sure that Belmont's being very intentional about where new growth is occurring and what that looks like. Each of those village centers, we'll talk about a tiny bit on the next slide, but they will all kind of occur differently based on their context. And then lastly, of course, there's an important need to continue to strengthen downtown and support Belmont's neighborhoods. So here, this slide is really just an overview of what has changed on the future land use map if you're comparing the 2018 plan to this current plan. So most importantly, the Wilkinson Boulevard area, that has been given a small area plan designation as well. That land has been pulled out and the future land use planning has been designated into this companion small area plan. We've looked at a new village center in the area kind of over by the marina area where there's already some mixed uses over there. There's a lot of interest in kind of creating a waterfront destination in that area, so we've identified that as a potential location for a new village center. And then lastly, we've removed a proposed village center that was contingent on the Catawba Crossings project. Not saying that it couldn't reappear if that project came back on the books, but at this horizon, it doesn't make sense to put in a lot of planning effort to cultivate a certain type of development there when that infrastructure is not coming in the near future. So moving on to housing and economy. Housing, again, it's just looking at how, especially in areas of low density, the maximum amount of tree canopy and open space can be conserved through clustering development and some of these other low impact development techniques that will be important to reinforcing environmental priorities. There's also been a whole study that went on about missing middle housing types. We know that the public is supportive of a couple key varieties like cottage courts and courtyard buildings as missing middle options. Those will be essential forms to help Belmont kind of broaden its housing options while offering alternatives to large apartment developments that maybe don't fit the character of Belmont. So trying to find ways that Belmont can have a little bit of variety in terms of housing stock, serve a wider variety of folks without totally adjusting the community character that we all love. As far as economy, Michael talked about it a little bit before, just about attracting or retaining new businesses and kind of working on regional destinations that may unlock additional economic opportunities. So speeding through here, mobility, Nat already gave a great rundown on that. So again, the most important idea there is just to align transportation policies and investment with our land use goals. And we think that this plan has been very forthcoming about doing so. Community character, that word cloud that Michael talked about is a great takeaway for that. But just looking at maintaining the character of Belmont and quality of life as residents describe it. So charming, friendly, small town, and a strong community. All of those things will continue to be priorities, and there's recommendations as such that go along with that and help reinforce that. Going to parks and recreation, during community engagement, we heard overwhelming appreciation for Belmont's diverse parks and recreational programming. I don't need to tell you that Belmont's park system is probably definitely, I would say, the envy of the rest of Gaston County. You guys have a great portfolio here, and so this plan recommends kind of continuing on with that and using that awesome, strong start to kind of finish the build out with some great additional parks and recreation assets. Probably the most important part of that will be looking at how to make greenways and connections between existing green space investments so that those can all be leveraged into kind of a continuous experience. As far as infrastructure, you talked a bit about this. He's going to get a little more into the weeds after that, or I guess the details that we really love and relish here. So that future utility forecasting model that he talked about absolutely plugs into the plan, plugs into section 9 the most obviously under infrastructure, so we kind of talk about that there. And then these last two sections, environment, we found that less than 20% of Belmont's planning area has slope, soil, or hydrological constraints with the potential to significantly restrict development. So what that really means is the city has a significant opportunity to primarily shape land development through planning and regulatory mechanisms. So making sure those are the way that you want them is going to be very key to helping shape how the rest of Belmont unfolds in the coming years. So there's of course those same priorities I've talked about before. Soil erosion and water quality was an additional thing to tree canopy and open space that we heard quite a lot about. And then finally, our last section, 11 here, when working with our nonprofit subconsultant, the Center for Comprehensive Planning, this section came strongly recommended. Not every comprehensive plan does this, but we thought it was important to provide an overview for you all as you make decisions of the surrounding communities' comprehensive plans and what they're planning to do, because as we all know, if something happens just across city limits or the border in Mount Holly, that's going to have massive impacts on Belmont as well, so it makes sense to know what our neighbors are doing and what's happening. All right, so we can take some questions on that now, or I can roll into a shorter segment on the Wilkinson Boulevard small area
Well, we're gonna have to, there's some procedural
Yeah,
niceties
that's
that we're
correct,
gonna
that's
have to
correct.
conform to, but are there any questions, then for Dylan on, this segment, the land use plan update as a whole?
I think maybe more of a comment, as we go through this, it's kind of encouraging to see, I feel like this is what council has been kind of moving towards, particularly when you hear multiple times maintaining that small town charm. And then, as you mentioned yourself, apartments may not always be the answer. Maybe there's other types of builds out there where we can adequately fill in and continue to maintain that small town charm. So, again, we've been saying this for the past couple of years, but the update to this land use plan, I think, has proven to be, really kind of what we anticipated, right? So again, just wanted to call that out as a comment, Jim.
Sure. Anything else? I just had one, not to quibble too much, and I understand when you all started this process back in '24, I do think there's some, especially down Wilkinson Boulevard, maybe this segues into that, where, just in terms of some of the setbacks and the idea that the silver line, well, we gotta save space for the silver.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen, and so, when we talk about Wilkinson, I don't know if we need such large setbacks, or whether that's perhaps inhibiting development, especially if the transit line's not gonna come, but
Right.
overall,
Fixed that, haven't we? I think we've already fixed that, haven't we?
yeah, I'm pretty sure that the silver
So,
line's not.
the comprehensive, yeah.
Require it anymore, but it still needs the codes need to be updated because they still require large setbacks, like we just
Yes.
reviewed the other night.
Mhm. Yes, and yeah,
Yeah, that's a great comment. You will not find a reference to the silver line in here. We did say, yeah. You're welcome. There is a little bit of leeway of like, if there is some other future mass transit option that comes through, whatever form that may take, that's in there just in case something happens so that we're prepared, but you will not see that mentioned by name. The other thing, I think this does segue extremely well into the Wilkinson plan, because one of those top findings that we had as an obstacle to revitalization along the corridor was that parcel size exactly. So not only is there kind of a question of like what the setback should be there and what the plan for the future should look like, but those parcels are very skinny and very shallow, just independent of that as well. And so kind of helping to figure out and make recommendations of how the private community or the public community can do things to make those parcels seem more attractive and unlock some more opportunities around there is one of the primary considerations of the small area plan.
thank you. Any other questions? All right, I will note that this is a public hearing. No one has signed up for public comment. So if there are no further questions, I entertain a motion to come out of public hearing.
Motion to come out of public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now out of public hearing, and that brings us to item C5, another public hearing. This one on Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan, plus Serbia, plus existing small area plans. So I'll entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
Motion to go into public hearing. Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are once again in public hearing. Now, once again, recognize Dylan to present the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan plus the existing other small area plan.
If you're worried about that plus existing adding a lot of length to this, I promise it's one slide. So, and I think this all in its entirety is only about 10. So we'll roll through it. So I think when we're talking about Wilkinson Boulevard and planning for that area, it only makes sense to start with some context on that corridor and the previous planning efforts. The most updated plan that's kind of active or giving some guidance still to that area is the Build a Better Boulevard plan from 2015. Even though I like the snappy name to it, and that's pretty cool, it's already 10 years outdated, and it did not offer much specificity for Belmont at all. It was a joint plan with Bremerton of Gaddenville. It was also very focused on engineering solutions more than painting an enticing future vision for revitalization. The whole name of the game here is to try to make Wilkinson Boulevard look like an enticing place to invest, so that you guys could win some infrastructure investments and kind of start to see Wilkinson Boulevard look more like the Belmont that we know and love. So beyond that, this new plan corrects that and now focuses on today's priorities. So what this does, the ultimate goal of accelerating redevelopment along the corridor is it translates the comprehensive plan down to a more focused approach to Wilkinson as it exists in Belmont and in the Belmont planning area. So that's kind of the idea of all of these small area plans, is to say, look, we can't plan, corridor by corridor or to this level of detail when you're just using the comprehensive plan. It's kind of like trying to hit a staple with a giant sledgehammer or something like that. So we need more focused tools to help us be able to do that. So there's this desire, of course, to make Belmont's section of the corridor look more like Belmont and function better. And we're just kind of painting that picture. There you'll see on the bottom, the small and shallow parcels are a major obstacle to redevelopment. So again, that's absolutely been a consideration. The other thing that we have done is, though this is just Belmont specific, and so we're not talking about the Cramerton and Maddenville parts anymore, we haven't expanded the focus area within Belmont. So the previous plan looked at only just a few feet in either direction of the corridor. We recognized, hey, even though there's some development that's more than a few feet off the corridor or isn't adjacent to the corridor, it is absolutely shaped by the corridor. I think the Walmart and Lowe's area, that shopping center, even though that is, kind of a quarter mile out from there, it's absolutely influenced by the presence of Wilkinson Boulevard. All of that kind of runs together. So we looked at that. So, of course, we need to talk about traffic trends just a little bit. Another important refocusing of this study was to update that stance. So the Build a Better Boulevard plan actually talked a lot about lowering capacity to match decreasing traffic, and that did make sense at the time. You can see that bar graph kind of going down consistently year over year, right as that plan was starting to be developed, and then right around that time, things started to reverse course. Of course, that outlier is 2020, self-explanatory there, but you can see now that we are seeing much higher traffic on the corridor than that plan was anticipating. Today, Wilkinson's seeing around 27,000 vehicles per day. Most of those vehicles we found are traveling across Belmont or to the freeway. Those are folks in Belmont getting around Belmont. It's kind of a come-through thing. And so this might be a helpful visualization. That does mean that the gateways to Belmont, or kind of those areas where you first cross into city limits, are seeing the highest traffic. You'll see that right around number 1 and number 4. Those are areas where NCDOT has measured the traffic, and so we're able to integrate that data, talk with Nat as well about kind of the impacts there. And so that does mean that at Belmont's gateways, we have an opportunity that's unique to kind of dress those up a little bit more and kind of make a more welcoming approach that really states what Belmont's about, since those are the highest traffic portions. So beyond there, I mentioned that future land use planning went from the comprehensive plan down to more fine detail here. That's been pulled out into this small area plan. I'm not going to dwell on this too long. We could talk a long time about each one of these categories and some examples and that sort of thing. But the two I want to call out here are that yellow is kind of the low to medium density residential development that exists today. There's no vision to significantly change that or anything like that. That exists the way it is. Purple we called out as opportunities to kind of introduce some more signature development. Those are at those major intersections that are key points within the city, and so if Belmont is going to have a statement or have a bit larger development that needs strong infrastructure support, that is where it should happen, not on the peninsula or other locations like that. The other thing we're going to mention is this mobility hub. If there is some sort of transit that ever does come through Belmont, that may be a good point that we've talked with Moncross about as kind of an area to have a hub there where you would kind of change modes. And I suppose, since I'm on this slide, the thing that I am personally most excited about is we identified an opportunity to extend a greenway along the southern side of the corridor. And so that's what that green dashed line is. That's integrated into the multimodal plan as well. This is kind of a high-level vision that says, hey, we could potentially activate the rear side of those parcels by having more bikes and foot traffic back there, and that might create a new development opportunity or a new opportunity for those areas to be higher trafficked by shoppers and folks like that. there might be some opportunities to kind of create some change that way. It does tie into the Abbey Creek Greenway as it exists today, kind of through the rotary. That's that orange area on the eastern side. So that's something else we can talk more about. So here, this is one concept of what it could look like at Park and Wilkinson 20, 30 years in the future. Again, the details of 4 versus 3 versus 2 stories don't really matter. It's just the idea that if there is going to be a larger concentration of development somewhere in Belmont, it should happen where there's infrastructure to support it. And then the other part of that is by having development that's carries more units and is higher value, this is a way that developers can start to pay for infrastructure upgrades along Wilkinson. So it's kind of like if there's a large influx of development along that corridor, there's a lot more money unlocked to be spent or transferred from that private developer onto the corridor, so that may be a win. The important thing to take away from this image, again, is not the specific forms of the buildings or anything like that, but is the idea that the highest height of those buildings would be right on the intersection, and then that would or should slope back down to the neighborhood, so nobody's in a 2-story house or 1.5-story bungalow next to 4 stories of development or anything of that nature. We've also thought about, just for visualization purposes, having kind of more interior circulation within there, so it's not folks driving in between all of those buildings. It's just kind of there's interior streets where people could walk from one building to another, or from the Reverie down, or that sort of thing. Again, a concept. This is the concept we're, I think, more excited about, is this is a look at how running a greenway back behind some of those parcels that front Wilkinson Boulevard could offer opportunities for shallow parcels, even in kind of a nearer term horizon, to open themselves up to where there's more folks biking or walking, that is more conducive to outdoor space, areas that are really community gathering spaces, and this is a strategy that's worked extremely well in peer communities where they really go all in on development and where they really go all in on greenway development, and that can help really energize the private sector there as well. So beyond there, we have 3 series of recommendations for the corridor, broken really easily into short-term, medium-term, and long-term. The most important one we're looking at for the short term is introducing some sort of new gateway moment as you come into Belmont, and those highest traffic areas, you're catching the eyeballs and advertising Belmont's brand. You guys may be familiar with this example in Hickory. Could look like this, could look absolutely different from this. Whatever Belmont's identity is should be represented there. We also looked at it might make sense to strengthen the highway corridor, or the highway commercial overlay that's there, as a tool to really kind of govern the aesthetic look and those setbacks we were talking about earlier, as far as the way that those dictate development on the corridor. So midterm recommendations, this is a little bit further out, so maybe it makes sense to invest city funds in corridor beautification that are concentrated on intersections, or kind of pull some of that investment down from those gateways to the rest of the corridor. And again, this is a signal to private and nonprofit partners that the city is serious about changing Wilkinson Boulevard's image, serious about generating excitement there, and so some core investments there can kind of be a signal to kind of govern what the private side and what the adjacent land use should look like and how that should materialize. It may also make sense at this time to change that highway commercial overlay to a full-blown zoning district that governs with more specificity in that area. And then finally, we have the long-term recommendations. There's only 2 here. It's, again, a pretty far horizon, so beyond updating this plan consistently, it may be a good time for the city on a larger time horizon to kind of be active about publicly assembling strategic parcels that are hard to develop, or that are especially important as kind of things that the city can take on and be playing an active role in how that is turned over. So that might be something that would be a good idea if there are key sites along that corridor that you will identify as particular opportunities. So with that, and closing this out here, we have some actions that are recommended. This is both for the small area plan and the comprehensive plan at large. So a strategic update of the land development code, as Tiffany talked about, probably makes sense to implement some of this stuff. Developing further small area plans or site-specific master plans would make sense. That waterfront area would be a great place to kind of look with a more finer grained tool at how that area might materialize at that village center. Coordinating these infrastructure projects with capital improvement plan makes a ton of sense. Making sure that where the infrastructure investments are actually going to happen is coordinated with this, and then having a continued role of the technical advisory committee that helped us put this together with the Center for Comprehensive Planning, who is our nonprofit partner that is offering up to 2 years of implementation services and regular check-ins with that board for free as part of their nonprofit mission, so they will be around to help see this forward. And the very last slide, this here is kind of an overview of those 3 small area plans that were outside of the scope of this project, but are very important to still shaping specific areas in Belmont. They have not been updated, but they are in their own document, as my peers up here have said. This will make them easier to locate, update more independently, and also Reagan did a great job streamlining the graphics, so everything is very visually uniform as well. So, with that, that is the end of the Wilkinson Boulevard presentation. We can take questions on that now, take more questions at the end. Up to you all, but thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. I would note this is a public hearing, but there have been no individuals who have signed up for public comment. So with there being no questions and no public comment, I would entertain a motion to come out of public hearing.
Motion to come out of public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Alex, second by Jason, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? You're now out of public hearing. That brings us to item C6, 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update Summary and Next Steps. And I'll recognize our planning director, Tiffany Farrow, to briefly summarize and provide the next steps in a brief format.
Okay, briefly.
Brief.
Summary next steps. As you saw presented here tonight, there are several major updates that were not in the 2018 plan that we're proud to have incorporated into the updates for your consideration this evening. Those largely being the introduction of a housing-specific chapter to help us that encourages infill development while also promoting smaller scale multifamily form options that better reflect the character of Belmont. Again, some more detailed specificity on our village centers, a concentrated effort to understand mobility in all its modes and to reference that specific plan as part of our larger plan effort, to focus on infrastructure as the basis of what is necessary to support the land uses we're envisioning, and lastly, to have a concentrated ability to hone in on our small area plans, both by updating the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan update and to consider recommendations as made by the consultants for future small area plan developments, both whether for the Belmont waterfront area for the new village center, as well as the potential for one for downtown. So for implementation and next steps, as was shared just a minute ago by Dylan, the proposal by Proservia did include as one of their partners the Center for Comprehensive Planning, who has committed to remaining engaged to assist staff and the community at large with implementing the vision that you are asked to consider for adoption this evening once these plans are adopted, for 2 years from this point forward. And that can really look like however we need it to look like within some of the ideas and level of scope as presented on your screen, whether that's consultation or examples of how other communities have tackled some of the challenges that we have, but just providing an additional resource for us to use so that we don't lose sight of the goals of the community as we move it forward. So this evening, I just wanted to make sure that we are, and I know this is going to feel a little bit off because we are updating the comprehensive land use plan, but per the state of North Carolina, any text amendments or land use plan updates still have to make the findings of consistency. So even though we are updating an update for the comp plan itself, we still have to make that finding. So bear with me through this. But we presented all of these plans that you are just learning about this evening to Planning Board at their August 21st meeting. And Planning Board, as well as staff, found that the plans were reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the comprehensive land use plan goals of land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure, as this has been a concurrent planning effort that incorporates all of those. So this evening, we are asking that you receive Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation, staff's report, which is in memo format, any public comments, and ultimately consider adoption of a resolution for each of the standalone plans presented before you this evening. As a reminder, these plans, while they are intended to serve as standalone plans, have been produced collectively as part of what we consider to be the full comprehensive land use plan update, and often cross-reference each other. So the recommendations for land use are necessarily informed by the transportation plan, which has been informed by the utility capacity model, and so they are, while standalone, still connected very much in their content. So with that, there, from my understanding, needs to be motions on each of those individual resolutions, and which can be made to approve as presented, approve as modified, or disapprove. And then for each planning document, we are asking that you make a finding of reasonableness in the public interest, as well as consistency with the goals of the comp plan. And so I just have these on the list so that we can understand all of the plans that are being asked for your consideration this evening. As a reminder, this is a brand new multimodal transportation plan. There are two updates, one to the comp plan itself, and then the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan. And then the other three are the small area plans as they exist today, with an understanding that there may be some desire to update those plans in the future as well. So that's what I have for you, and stand by for any questions that you have, as well as the consultants stand by for questions if you want to understand how these efforts work together.
Any final questions?
So we're not being asked to take any action on the existing small area plans, correct?
You are, but not because the content within them has changed. So for clarity, those are still as council previously adopted. All we did was take the content within those plans, pulled it directly out of the larger planning document,
Right.
and then formatted it in a way so that it can stand alone. But the body of the text or the graphics, none of that content within the body of those documents is proposed to be amended, just to stand alone.
Thanks for clarification.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. I guess you can leave that last slide up.
You want that one?
No, that one.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Given the lack of questions, I'm assuming there is no need for any discussion before we move into the various approvals. Is that correct? All right, so we will advance to the approvals, and these are all in the forms of resolutions rather than ordinances. However, I understand from Tiffany's presentation that we still do need to make the consistency findings, it appears. So we shall do that. And we shall start with item C7, consider approval of multimodal transportation plan from Kimley Horn. So do I have a motion to approve a resolution in support of this plan?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that resolution passes unanimously. I also need a motion that this resolution is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan in land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Jason. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously, so we have approved the multimodal transportation plan. That brings us to item C8, consider approval of comprehensive land use plan update for Serbia. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve is presented.
Motion by Jason, second by Catherine. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution unanimously passes. I will also need a motion that the resolution is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan in land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the comprehensive land use plan update has been passed unanimously. It is now time for the lightning round. Item C9, consider approval of Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan, Placervia, Center City Small Area Plan, South Fork Small Area Plan, and Mont Cross Small Area Plan. I think there's just one small there, but in any event, let's start with the Wilkinson Boulevard Small Area Plan. Do I have a motion to approve that resolution?
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I will also need a motion that that resolution is reasonable and in the public interest, consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan in land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Catherine, seconded by Jason. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Wilkinson Small Area Plan is approved. I'll need a motion to approve the resolution for the Center City Small Area Plan.
I'll make the motion. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Catherine.
All right. Motion by Catherine, seconded by Alex. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And I will need a motion that this resolution is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan in land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure.
Second.
Motion by Jason, seconded by Alex. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is readopted. Motion to approve a resolution for the South Fork Small Area Plan. Does anyone want to make that motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, seconded by Catherine. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion is approved unanimously. I also need a motion that the resolution is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan and land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? South Fork Small Area Plan is unanimously readopted. Finally, I need a motion to approve the resolution with respect to the Mont Cross Small Area Plan.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Motion by Jason, seconded by Catherine. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I also need a motion that the resolution is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan and land use, mobility, community character, and infrastructure.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And the motion to readopt the small area plan for Mont Cross is approved unanimously. Did we forget anything? All right. Everything has been approved. Thank you, everyone, for all of your efforts. All small area plans, updates, et cetera, have been approved unanimously, and we are excited about the process and what we have now adopted. So thank you for all the many months of hard work.
Great job, too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great job.
All right. But we still have one item left on the agenda. Everyone's role is done, I'm afraid, except for our friends with Withers Ravenel. So we have item C10, lucid demonstration here. And so I will recognize Eddie coming back up to demonstrate lucid.
Yep, so I'm here to bring it home so you can get home.
Because I'm not sure how lucid any of us are.
That's right. You guys have consumed quite a bit of information this evening, so I will definitely be very brief here. But I do want you to understand the power and the value that this provides back to the staff when trying to better understand the impacts of the community, which means they're going to be able to relay that information better to you as well. And so a couple of things. Earlier I talked about the 2018 plan, and green areas are areas of opportunity and red are areas of challenge. Under the 2025 plan that you've just adopted, this is what that map looks like now. This is kind of just a high level. And what is included in that is really existing and approved developments that are being put on the ground today, that remaining developable land that I talked about earlier. We're looking at the sewer basin constraints from the hydraulic model that we talked about earlier, the downstream constraints. Again, as I mentioned earlier, what happens on the south side of town has ripple effects all the way back up to the treatment plant. And then the sewer lift station constraints along the way. So this is just kind of a quick overview. Again, green is sort of minimal impact to the sanitary sewer system, which is one of your major inhibitors to growth. And then reds and purples are areas of high or extreme impact. That's not to say that you can't develop there. It's not to say that you should discourage development there. It just comes at a greater cost, right? It requires greater infrastructure investment. So one of the key things that we talk about with Lucid is really that kind of digital twin where we can ask those what-if questions. And so when we are maybe considering a development or speaking with a developer about, what is required, what kind of impacts does this have? One of those first questions is, will this development make us exceed our level of service goals? We talked about that earlier and at previous meetings that, under a 5-year rain event, you're having some extraneous flow getting into the sanitary sewer system, and we're basically wanting to try to make that system perform under those types of rain events. The second thing is, does it require downstream capital improvements? That development right here may not require improvements in that exact area, but that flow that is traveling all the way to the treatment plant, it may have areas of downstream capital improvements that are required to be able to handle that additional demand. One of the key things we'll talk about here as we dive into this is what are those opportunities for cost sharing with the public-private partnership. You have system development fees. That could be a continued vehicle. This could be something that goes into a system development fee calculation. That kind of spreads it across the entire community. Another thing that you could look at is some type of cost sharing with each individual developer. Just like what we were talking about earlier. Maybe this is a public-private partnership of, well, this is something that could benefit the entire community. Is that something you would be willing to participate in? So I think there are many opportunities there. The biggest thing is hopefully we're showing you or demonstrating through this what some of those investment needs are going to be, where they're going to need to be, and ultimately what are the costs of those needs. Again, many times there are direct immediate sewer impacts. Again, with some of the development, there will be new sewer that is put into the ground, new water that's put into the ground. You'll be taking ownership of that. And so how does that play into this model too as well? The last thing that I'll say here is this extraneous flow reduction, inflow and infiltration, where rainwater is getting into the sanitary sewer system. There are multiple reasons for that. That could be aged infrastructure. It could be roof drains. It could be cleanouts. There are many different ways. So I'm not going to go back through that whole litany again of information. But this is what makes this somewhat complex. The way the model is using this right now is saying if we don't remove I&I, we're just increasing pipe size and increasing capacity to handle additional demand. This is what the cost will be. However, I would encourage, as we've chatted about before, there are other ways to increase capacity, and that is removing extraneous flow. And quite honestly, that is one of the more cost-effective ways, rather than digging up and putting in new pipe. Let's reduce demand with that extraneous flow being removed. So,
Question.
yes, go right ahead.
So a lot of this is geared obviously towards proposed development. We've had some inquiries recently, and Miles and I have had some conversations with some residents, especially down on the peninsula, because there's a lot of pockets as you go down South Point Road that are not in the incorporated area, and so they're not on city water. So some of them have asked about, the potential and the cost if they were that. Is there any sort of application for this tool to be able to evaluate, whether that's possible and what the potential cost would be for existing neighborhoods?
Yes, certainly. So when we dive into the model itself, you'll kind of see highlighted parcels. Those are anything that's undeveloped that's inside your service area. Even if there's not an existing sewer line in that area, we would expect that developer to build out the required infrastructure to support their development. but then also what are those impacts when that development connects to the existing infrastructure that's there. So, yeah, we can definitely take a look at that.
But this is only for sewer.
That's correct, only for sewer, not for water. Yeah, thank you for that point. That's something you could look at in the future, obviously, if you see the value. Again, I won't hit all these just really quickly, but again, we've calculated the sewer investment cost. Okay, this is the demand coming from the land use, the density that's proposed. This is how much flow is going to come there, and then this is basically how much that infrastructure is going to need to be upsized or additional capacity, and then what are the costs of that upsizing. We are also calculating future demands. That's really nice as you look at your treatment plant or your partners that you're maybe doing some of the treatment, being able to project to them how much additional flow capacity or treatment capacity you're going to need at the plant. This is one that doesn't, it's a little bit odd, but I put it in here for a couple of reasons. Your sewer system is funded by the enterprise fund through your sewer and water rates. But one of the things I always look at when I'm working with council and other stakeholders is we have this thing of, well, we're going to get all this additional tax revenue, right, in the general fund. So the general fund is not funding this, but ultimately we want to look at that kind of return on investment. If we're making that investment in infrastructure today and we see growth, is that going to create additional revenues back? So that's kind of calculated in here as well, just as another insight point, another data point. Again, I think this creates a great opportunity for cost recovery and partnership with development. And again, what if we actually go more dense in this area? What if we reduce that density? What if we change the product in that area? We can start to actually do that real time inside the model. And ultimately, it is that single source of truth for Belmont staff, where the comprehensive plan, the sewer master plan, all of this is being pulled together into one format. So that said, I'm going to let this run. This is a little kind of a video of this, but this is literally how the staff interacts with it. The yellow colored parcels that are there are kind of vacant or potentially more developable land that could be redeveloped. One of the things you'll notice here is there's a cost per acre and a cost per ERU, which is equivalent residential unit. The other thing that you'll notice is that developer investment. That's showing what the prorated downstream costs are. And as I go into different areas, notice that number can change drastically. There are some areas in town where the impacts are pretty minimal. There are other areas in town where the downstream and sewer impacts are pretty extreme. And so again, understanding that, I want you to focus less on the actual numbers, because again, I think there's some other strategies where we can help bring some of those numbers down through I&I reduction, but look at the relativity between each one of these areas. In this area here, I mean, $20,000 per equivalent residential unit. I mean, that's a pretty major impact to the system. Ultimately, this is really good information for the development community as well, so they can understand some of the challenges that they may face as they try to move forward. Everything that you're seeing kind of highlighted in the red lines and et cetera, those are the pipes that are basically not going to be able to meet that 5-year level of service. And so we've identified all the infrastructure, the lift stations, everything that's out there that basically is going to be capital projects or rehabilitation and improvement projects over time, and that's where the costing is coming from. We can certainly dive deeper in this. Again, would love to entertain any questions that you have, but I know it's been a long evening and a lot of work, so I want to be respectful of that as well.
Dude, first of all, thank you. This is an excellent tool, but remind me again, I know we talked about this last time you were here, but how does it stay updated? So let's say, as lines continue to age or more capacity comes down through them, how does this tool stay updated so that staff can use this in perpetuity?
Yep, so as new development is approved, it basically is just pulled right out. Everything that's on here, by the way, is back in your GIS, your Geographic Information System. So that is the single source of truth of all this data. You've got great staff here. Very helpful all the way through this process. So as that is being updated inside the GIS, this is accessing the same data from that. As sanitary sewer flow, you guys do regular monitoring at your lift stations. That information is going into Lift Command, that one program I showed earlier. That is feeding information into this. So this basically becomes the repository where it is pulling data from multiple sources, that single source of truth for each one of those pieces of information, and everything comes back here. As you complete projects, as you go in and replace sewer lines or put in a new sewer line, all of that is inside GIS. It immediately shows up here because it's using the exact same map service. Sorry.
Or we reduce our INI.
Or you reduce your INI, that is correct. And along those lines, really quickly, that first project has kind of been completed to help us identify something that you're going to be seeing over time is that continued measurement of INI, and ultimately, as you do these projects, saying, well, we invested this much money for INI reduction, what did we actually get? Did we get the outcome that we were expecting? That is going to be really, really important because, again, it is not a moment in time. As you do this work, you need to understand the impacts of that work. One, to just so that you go back and model and better inform you, but two, to understand the value of the dollar that you've invested. Did we get the value that we expected?
Question.
Yes.
So you mentioned before, I know this model thus far is kind of built primarily for sewer evaluation. But I think you mentioned before that you could also sort of bolt on, transportation models with road improvements or, water infrastructure.
Yes.
So that's a pretty versatile model or feature that can be added.
It is, and again, there are communities we work with, hey, as this development happens, that also means that I need to hire 2 more police officers, a police car, or I need to build a new fire station, or I need to build a new park, or we need to invest more in greenways, because that's going to be a request from that community as we continue to expand out. The biggest thing that I would say in your community particularly is, again, there is a limited amount of land, of developable land left. Again, I think, if this tool existed 15 years ago,
If only.
yeah, this would have been really valuable, even more valuable for you then. It's not to say that it's not valuable now, but certainly communities that have a lot more room for growth, a lot longer runway of growth, this is an extremely valuable way to be able to visualize that and explain. One last thing too on this, I think it's really important, as we're making land use decisions throughout this, having that transparency and that ability to talk with the public and say, we could see that same vision for our community, this type of product in this area, but this constraint was one of those really major reasons why we can't really achieve that vision in that area. Or this is why we're really trying to put this product on the ground here. I know it may not be exactly what you're wanting, but this is our best opportunity to basically support that type of growth. So again, I think that's just a really important factor to talk about as well. If no other questions, I will stop talking and let you go home, but I'll certainly be glad to answer any other questions.
Just maybe a question for Ronald. I guess, has this been kind of fully integrated into kind of staff? Have they been trained on it? Is this something that we're going to start implementing when we're talking with potential developers and CIP and such?
Right, yes, we have been in touch with Withers all along the way. Our public works staff, our city engineer knows the software now. We've actually, talking about the INI, we've finished the INI study for phase 1 and considering to put flow meters in the ground at this point that shows the actual improvement. So we can put this data back into the system. We're actually studying INI phase 2 in the city now, which will add more information in there. So yes, we know how to operate the software.
Because I guess to your point, this is an awesome software, but it absolutely has to stay updated, right? So when you stop updating it, then it becomes useless, and you probably have to restart the exercise. So that's encouraging to hear for sure.
Yeah, and again, we do this as a managed service, so we're here right beside if they have questions, whatever, if they're, maybe there's a backlog of updates that for whatever reason haven't happened, we're here to help you with that, so.
And so there's no this is the output, I guess, of the study that you all did on sewer capacity. So there's no report sewer capacity as of this date, it all went into this tool, is that correct, or is there a?
There is a written report that has been submitted back to the town staff to basically review and finalize, but that is pretty much complete, pending any revision from staff, from Jonathan's staff.
Okay, obviously, I think we'd like to see that at the, when it's finalized.
Yeah. But yeah, think about this as being sort of the living version of that document, right? This is
Yes.
making it not just a static thing on the shelf, but something that's constantly evolving as you evolve.
Unlike the Constitution.
That's right, that's right. I appreciated that very much.
Yes.
Come full circle.
You've come full circle.
That's right.
Yes. All right, any last questions?
Maybe just a comment, Jim. You know, it's pretty remarkable how far we've come. Because I think we started this process with questions of where are lines, where's our issues, and now we're able to have a visual and a map to be able to define that. I think just in about, a 2-year, 3-year, 2.5-year time, it's been quite a progress. So I really do appreciate it.
Yes, well said. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that being the last item on the regular agenda, I will note, don't forget, we have another meeting, a special meeting set for the 24th, which is a Wednesday? Next Wednesday.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, right here. We will be addressing the special use permit, and we will also be hearing from Health Design on the structural study.
Yeah, the Ford Center and Old City Hall.
Right, along with the closed session. Yeah, all right. So don't forget, anything else, Miles?
No, sir.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Alex, second by Catherine, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.